Michael, I want to go back to this idea that you introduced about selling versus buying, and point specifically to a piece of data that Seb included in the survey around expectations for performance versus actual performance, because that's an issue that I've seen around for the past few decades, which is the idea that performance is often oversold. There's an over-reliance on past performance and the expectation for future results, and that even in years when there's good performance, there's still a gap between what clients were expecting and what they actually received. Can either of you talk about how you think that can be remedied and that gap be closed so that clients are feeling more confident about what they're getting and what the results of their portfolio performance are?
Well, you know, Seb may have a different perspective on this, but as I see it, Hannah, I think it's part and parcel of this whole issue of selling versus helping someone buy. And what I mean by that is when you're in a sales-oriented business system, you have an MFO trying to sell a discretionary asset management, you know, capability that promises some kind of performance, or you know, a private bank or a brokerage firm. You're always saying to the client, you know, you're setting an expectation. Measure me on my performance, right? Measure me on my firm's performance, on my idea, on whatever. When you're in the buying side, when you're in the advising side, and when you're really working with a family around setting their definition of what performance means around their financial plan, objectives, preferences, all of the things that go into at that umbrella level, okay, then you're setting an expectation for the family as to what the family's performance should be. And so the conversation changes. Okay, it's did we accomplish our objectives? Then you evaluate all of the different providers of product underneath that as to whether they performed or not. But at least when you're in the buying role and the advising role, you've actually changed the dynamic to be about the family's performance and not your firm's performance. And that's where I think the really great dialogue with the family happens, right? Because it's about them. It's not about us. Now, we have to be sure that every provider underneath, you know, in the equity space or the fixed income space or whatever it is actually performing, okay, in accordance with, you know, whatever it is their role in the portfolio is. But it's a very different role when you're on this side of the table with the family. Seb, how do you see it?
I'm going to take I do take a slightly different route with performance. We're spending I don't disagree with what you've said, Michael. It's just I think that performance is a much bigger topic to clients, and it isn't about the size of the portfolio per se. There's a statistic that we use. We say, you know, wealth management to the industry is 90% mathematical and 10% emotional, but actually wealth management to the clients is 90% emotional and 10% mathematical. And if it's emotional, which it is, and from all the client research we do, we then are actually thinking that performance should be measured on completely different parameters. One base parameter would be, how happy are you? How happy were you with the service over the period of time? In fact, reward me on the fact that you've made me sleep better. How well have you slept this year? You know, these things are also parts of the... I know it sounds trivial, and on a level it does appear to be trivial, but actually one of the reasons that customers come at whatever level of wealth to a wealth professional is that your function is to help them do better. And that isn't just about a bigger number. And we need to measure that better. There's no end to that story, although I do know some firms, actually in the States, that are now measuring on happiness. And they're paying an incentive, if you will, to their advisors based on the score of happiness that they're given by their clients. And I think that's fascinating for the future of satisfaction.
Seb, I totally agree with that. And what I think is really interesting to connect sort of, you know, the two perspectives is that when you as an advisor are free from the having to sell a product role, yes, and having to defend, right, your product, then I think as an advisor you can focus on all of the different elements that make up performance for that particular client. How in control they feel, how happy they feel. You know, the numbers are part of it, but yes, you're free to be able to really get very engaged with the client around the definition of performance for them without having to worry about defending something, yes, which is very powerful.
And the more you can get the distribution between emotional and mathematical closer for the provider and the client, the more likely you are to figure out what it is that's going to make the client happy and satisfied.
Yes, but there are some very clear matriculation points if you look in the psychology of a wealthy client, and we've measured what are the attributes for happiness, and the financial planning process is part of that. Financial planning is applied at all levels of wealth as well. But the problem that customers and clients have is that they don't know when they're choosing a wealth manager how good they are at making them happy. There are some measurement points that the industry presents to them about how big they are, how effective they've been in their market, the manager selection, all of the very, very important financial data points. But there's a base question, which is how good are you at achieving what I want to have? And that's the next stage of future wealth, is calibrating that, because I think that'll be a bit of a gift for the industry in going forward.
I look forward to that, Seb.
Yeah, I mean, you both make great points, which hopefully will break the age-old cycle of looking for new providers based on the performance they can deliver and then firing them because something about the nature and quality of the relationship was underwhelming. And it had more to do with interpersonals than it does any kind of quantitative or statistical performance numbers. Yes. So the closer we can get everybody to thinking about things and measuring things in the same way, I think the longer people are likely to be able to retain those important high net worth relationships.
Yes.